Well, as the Texas legislature convenes for the 89th legislative session, Texans are revealing what they want lawmakers to focus on this session. The team at the Texas Politics Project at UT Austin is out with a new poll today. Dr. James Henson, director of the Texas Politics Project, joining us now to talk more about those results. Dr. Henson, thank you for being with us.
Great to be back with you, Ashley.
You know, before we start talking about the results, I always like to talk about methodology first. Tell us who you talked to and when you talked to them.
Sure. We talked to 1,200 registered voters in the middle of December, about the 7th through the 17th or 18th or so. We reached them via the internet using YouGov, and we had a demographically balanced sample of Texans from all over the state.
Now, I like this because you guys started with an open-ended question. You asked people just overall what they think the legislature's top priority should be. Wasn't really that surprising given your past polling.
You know, it wasn't. You and I have talked a lot about the dominance of immigration and border security as an issue in Texas, particularly among Texas Republicans, and we saw that again. About a fifth of the sample, a little more, said that immigration and border security were the most important things for the legislature to tackle, followed by the economy and prices, and then at some distance, public education. And I think the most striking thing about this result is that this really carries over from what we saw in the election. These were the big issues that drove people in the last election in November, and they were still on people's minds even once the election was over in mid-December, and I expect they'll stay on people's minds as the legislature meets.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting is obviously going into this session, we have a budget surplus again. This time it's about $24 billion, a little less than last time, but people still sort of want to see some more property tax cuts when you ask them about this.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's a bias in people's minds. They don't mind government spending money on things that they think are important. And in general, when we ask people in a number of policy areas whether they thought the state was spending too much, too little, or the right amount, big majority said the state was spending too little on mental health services, healthcare, electric infrastructure, and K through 12 public education. All four of those items, about half or more of our respondents told us the state was not spending enough. And so there's bipartisan interest in spending more on these areas. Of course, there's always much more desire to spend money than there is money, even when there is something of an overhang to start with, like we saw this time.
Another interesting, I think, nugget that was in this polling was you asked people about their preferences. You talked about certain subjects and whether or not people thought the rules that are in place now were too strict, not strict enough, they should be left alone. Let's first talk about voting.
Yeah, voting, obviously, one of the more controversial subjects in virtually all of the last several sessions. And Texans are pretty evenly divided, and it's really along party lines. About a third, 35%, said that the law should be more strict. Only about a fifth said they should be less strict, and the close to the modal category, about 36% said they should stay as they are. They prefer the status quo. Most of those that want the laws more strict are Republicans. Most of those that want them less strict are Democrats.
When we think about this same sort of question, but we ask people about gun laws, talk to us about what folks had to say there.
Well, again, not a lot of surprises here, but about half of Texans say that they want gun laws to be more strict. That's in line with what we've seen over the last couple of years. But again, this is even more divided among partisan lines. 3/4 of Democrats want these gun laws to be more strict, but only a little more than a quarter of Republicans want the same thing. The more frequent response among Republicans, about 40% say leave the laws as they are. Of course, Republican preferences and Republican lawmakers have had the most influence over the gun laws as they are now in Texas.
Yeah. Certainly interesting, and there are so many more interesting nuggets within, this poll, but that is all the time that we have. So, Dr. Henson, we thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. People can find it at texaspolitics.utexas.edu for more results.
Perfect. Also, KVUE.com. All right, Dr. Henson, thank you so much.